Today, we're checking out the KinGrinder P2, a very budget-friendly hand grinder. The P series includes the P0, P1, and P2, all priced around $50. I've tried plenty of entry-level hand grinders, but none at this price point. It sounds attractive, but does it really work for pour-over or espresso? I'll also compare it with the KinGrinder K6 to see how it stacks up. KinGrinder's packaging isn't much to talk about, just a plain box. Inside, you get a brush and a rubber sleeve, pretty standard stuff. If you're curious about the unboxing, please check out my shorts video. The whole body, including the handle lid and catch cup, is made of plastic. It does give off a bit of a cheap look, but the plastic feels quite sturdy, not flimsy at all. But the internal shaft support is made of metal. The handle is straight with a wooden knob, and it feels good in the hand. The grinder itself is slim, making it easy to grip, though it can get a bit slippery while grinding. I'd recommend using the rubber sleeve for a better grip. The P2 uses a bottom adjustment system where one full turn equals 30 clicks. These numbers are not calibrated to 0, so they're just there to help you count clicks quickly. It's also incredibly lightweight, around 300 grams. It's about the same size as the EasyPresso Q2, but slightly larger in diameter. Unlike the Q2, it doesn't fit inside an AeroPress. I'm not sure if it works with the latest AeroPress model, but still, it's a decent option as a backup or for outdoor use. It's also more compact than Timemore C2 and C3. To be honest, the overall build isn't that impressive compared to other grinders. It almost feels like a toy. It seems like KinGrinder has invested most of the cost into the Burr, cutting corners elsewhere to keep the price low. But for coffee enthusiasts, that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you can accept the lower build quality in exchange for a well-made Burr set, this grinder could be a great addition to your brewing setup. The P2 uses a heptagonal burr, while the P1 and P0 use hexagonal and pentagonal burrs. That's the only difference between them. What surprised me is that the Burr design and geometry look identical to those on the more expensive K6, just scaled down. The K6 has a 48mm burr, while the P2 is 38mm. I'm curious if this means they produce similar flavor profiles. Let's grind some beans and see how it performs. I followed KinGrinder's recommended settings from the manual. The fine grind is definitely fine enough for espresso, and you can go even finer if needed. Visually, the medium grind consistency looks good, but I did notice a fair amount of fines in the pour-over grind. The coarse grind setting is suitable for French press, but also have quite a lot of small particles. Now, let's check the grinding speed. First, the plastic catch cup tends to attract a lot of static, causing fine grinds to stick to the sides. So, I'd spray some water every time to reduce static. Now I grind 15 grams of beans at the 50-click setting for pour-over. The grinding experience isn't very smooth. I really need to grip the grinder tightly, and with denser light roast beans, I can feel quite a bit of resistance. It even gets stuck sometimes, and I have to apply more force to keep going. But it takes only 37 seconds. That's pretty fast for a 38mm burr. For espresso, I used a 20-click setting. Grinding darker roasted beans was easier, and it took less than a minute to grind 18 grams, which isn't bad at all. If I'm only drinking 1 or 2 shots a day, I'm happy to use the P2 for espresso every day. Now let's talk about flavor. As I mentioned earlier, the burr on the K6 is quite similar to the one on the P2, so I decided to do a side-by-side comparison to see how they affect the flavor. For this test, I used the same light roasted Ethiopian beans, dialed in very similar grind sizes. K6 is a much faster grinder, taking only 23 seconds to grind the beans. I used a V60 dripper with 15 grams of coffee, brewing 225 grams of water. The P2's brew took 2 minutes and 40 seconds to fully drain, while the K6 only took 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Looking at the coffee bed, the P2's was a bit muddy compared to the cleaner bed from the K6, which likely means the P2 produces more fines. Surprisingly, the overall flavor profile of the coffee from both grinders was very similar. At first sip, you might think they came from the same grinder. However, upon closer inspection, the P2's aroma was noticeably weaker, and the aftertaste was also less pronounced, leaving the overall flavor feeling a bit hollow. The K6, on the other hand, delivered higher sweetness, better clarity, and a richer flavor profile. If I were to rate the K6 at a solid 10, the P2 would probably get a 7. But for a grinder at this price point, that's still pretty impressive. Let's check out the espresso quality. I tested the P2 with a dark roast, setting the grind size to around 20 clicks, give or take a click. I used my new Gemilai G3007L espresso machine, which is priced around $500 and packed with advanced features like PID and a dual heating system. It comes with a 58mm portafilter, so I could use all my puck prep tools. The first shot ran a bit too fast, yielding 40 grams in about 21 seconds. The espresso looked decent, but the acidity was quite high. I adjusted the grind one click coarser and kept the same puck prep. It was relatively easy to dial in a good flow rate. This time, the flow rate slowed down, finishing 36 grams in 25 seconds. The result was more balanced, and it was less harsh and sour when drinking straight. If you dilute it into an Americano or mix it with milk for a latte, it's still quite enjoyable. While the P2's 33 micron adjustments don't offer a lot of room for fine-tuning, it's still capable of getting the job done, especially if you're using a pressurized basket or a manual espresso machine. One problem is that it's often sold out due to high demand, and prices might be slightly higher than when it was first released. This is my review of the KinGrinder P2. If you've used the P series, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hope you enjoy this review, and thanks for watching.